Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, we'll treat two key themes in the SAT test: conclusions and transitions. Conclusions and transitions. Um, in the SAT test, you'll be tested for your ability to conclude incomplete paragraphs, to pick the appropriate conclusions, and you'll be tested for your ability to notice the um, right transition words that should be used in certain context. So before we take a look at sample questions, let's take a look at what a good conclusion should um, entail and the different types of transitions. But let's begin with conclusions. Now, a conclusion should do the following things. It should summarize the key ideas without restating them mechanically, which means you're not just going to repeat. You're not going to repeat like the way it was said in the paragraph or in the passage, but you're to summarize it in a way that shows that okay, this is what we've talked about and this is what we have at the end of the day. Number two, it should reinforce the paragraphs or passages purpose. What exactly is the purpose? What is the goal of writing the paragraph? Now, if you know the goal, then the conclusion should kind of resound that purpose, that claim. If the goal is to convince, if the purpose of the paragraph is to convince, then the conclusion should reinforce that goal of convincing. If it is to explain, the conclusion should reinforce explanation or explaining. If it is to inform, I guess that's also obvious what the conclusion should be doing. It should inform. It should it should it should reinforce the fact that you're trying to inform. Then it should provide closure. That is, it should give the reader, the feeling that they have come to the end of the paragraph. Now, the SAT question on conclusion is usually phrased like this. It may not be exactly like this, but it's usually phrased like this. Which sentence would most effectively conclude the paragraph? Most effectively conclude the paragraph. Another is, which choice best provides a conclusion consistent with the passage's main idea? Which choice best provides a conclusion that is consistent with the passage's main idea? Now, let's take a look at what a weak conclusion looks like and what a strong one looks like. Look at this weak one. In conclusion, these are some of the reasons why art is important. This is weak because it is vague. It doesn't do any of these three things. It doesn't summarize the key ideas, it doesn't reinforce the paragraph's purpose, and it doesn't provide closure. This sentence is formulaic and uninformative. Look at the better one. By preserving cultural memory and inspiring new perspectives, art continues to shape how societies define themselves. So you see here, it lists out the things that were mentioned in the paragraph. It says preserving the way art is shaping societies by preserving cultural memory and inspiring new perspectives. That's it. It's that's simple. Now, common pitfalls in conclusions. Your conclusion should not introduce a new idea, so be careful. Rather, it should just, restate what has been said before. It should not end too quickly. It should not be overly abrupt. It should not end without reflecting on what has been discussed. It should not restate earlier sentences word for word. That's what I meant here by it should not be mechanical. I can't find it, but I know we talked about it not being mechanical. Alright. So it should not restate word for word, and then it should not be irrelevant. It should offer detail that doesn't fit the it shouldn't offer a detail that does not fit the paragraph's argument. Because if it offers a detail that does not fit the paragraph's argument, then obviously it is relevant. By argument, we're saying main idea. Right? Look at this example. The answer is clearly stated. The paragraph describes the benefits of urban gardens for community health. Which conclusion best completes it? The paragraph describes the benefits of urban gardens for community health. Which conclusion best completes it? Urban gardens also require careful maintenance. Wrong, because this does not help to, so it doesn't conclude anything on benefits. Remember, this paragraph talks about benefits of urban gardens. So talking about maintenance is not a conclusion. It could be mentioned in the paragraph, but this is not a conclusion. Then you see some cities lack space for gardening. This cannot be a conclusion. Remember, we're talking about conclusion, not an extra detail. Then gardening tools are often expensive, also not ideal. So the answer is B. These green spaces illustrate how simple environmental efforts can strengthen both bodies and communities. So this kind of reinforces the fact that it's trying to talk about benefits. Look at the next one. Transitions. Now, transitions are basically signpost words. Or signal words. What they do is that they help to indicate when a turn or change is occurring. A turn or change. They basically help to make your work cohesive. By cohesive, I mean connected. And that's why the definition says transitions are the connective tissue of writing. They signal logical relationships. I'll explain what I mean by signal. In the SAT test, transition questions test whether a word or phrase appropriately connects to sentences or paragraphs. You might see a question like, which choice most effectively connects the previous sentence to the next? Which choice most effectively connects the previous sentence to the next? Or which transition best maintains the logical relationship between the ideas? Now, types of transitions. I told you that transition words are also signal words. They signal the relationship between two words, two sentences, two paragraphs, two ideas. Basically, they signal the relationship, the logical relationship. So now let's discuss the types of relationships that transition words signal and the examples of words that could signal those relationships. First, we have the relationship of addition or continuation. When you want to indicate in your sentence that you are adding to a previous idea or you are continuing a previous idea, you use these transition words. You could use furthermore. You could say moreover. You could say additionally. You could say in fact. I added one here as well as. All of these show that you are adding, you're continuing a previous point, or you're adding to a previous point. So basically, the function is that it adds information. Next, we have the logical relationship of contrast or opposition. Contrast or opposition. In the case of contrast, We have words that contrast just means when you are saying a new idea that contradicts the previous one. We have words like however, nevertheless, on the other hand, despite this, in spite of. I'm not expecting you to memorize every word, but I'm expecting you to know the different contexts in which they can be used and the relationship that they reflect. That way, if you see them in options during the test, you know which one is the right one to pick. All of these show contradiction or exception. For instance, I was there, he came early, nevertheless, he was punished. So, nevertheless, was punished shows contradiction with the fact that he came early. That how can somebody come early and he was still punished? So, nevertheless, is showing contrast there. We have the logical relationship of cause and effect. Cause and effect just means one thing is a result of another. That is, one thing is the reason for another. Cause and effect. Cause is the reason, effect is the result. So the kinds of words that show this relationship include therefore, consequently, as a result, and thus. Therefore, consequently, as a result, and thus. All of these show result or consequence. This is another comparison. Comparison just means when you put two things side by side, two ideas side by side, and you try to compare them, try to show the similarities between them. Example of words that show this kind of logical relationship include similarly, likewise, in the same way, in the same light. They all show similarity. Not sameness. Not sameness. Similarity. Similarity means close to, but not exactly the same. Another relationship we have is examples or illustration. That is, when you're trying to give an example for something or trying to explain something. So you say, for example, you say, for instance, you say to illustrate. All of this try to provide specific evidence. Another is sequence and time. Sequence and time. This just means the relationship of trying to show the arrangement of something, how something was arranged, or how the order in which something occurred. For instance, we have subsequently, which means after. We have meanwhile, which means um, the order in which something also occurred. We have before and afterward. Before, obviously, meaning something occurred prior, and afterward, meaning something occurred after. We have concession and qualification. Concession just shows when you're saying while something is the case, another is also the case. Like you're conceding. For instance, although I was um, announced to take the to be the team lead, I would appreciate if everybody contributes equally. So you're conceding. You're saying yes, I know I did this. Yes, this is true, but I will also accept that. So you're considering something to be true, or something, yeah, something to be true, or something to be false. You're considering a fact. So we have examples of words like although, even though, while, and though. The function of these words are to acknowledge contrast, but also maintain a point. So you're acknowledging a fact, but you're also maintaining something. Finally, we have summary and conclusion. Here, you have transition words that help to show the relationship of summarizing or ending, or coming to an end. We have examples such as in conclusion, overall, to sum up. Please pardon the typographical error. To sum up, or ultimately. Basically, the signal closure. Now, common SAT transition errors. These are some of the types of errors you would notice in the test. There's the error of logical mismatch. This is a case when the transition doesn't match the relationship. For instance, however, pollution continues to rise due to industrial growth. It should be as a result pollution, because this sentence does not show contrast. It doesn't. All it does is explain or give a reason for something. So it cannot be however, it is as a result. At times, redundancy is used. Redundancy just means when something is not necessary in a specific place. Here you see the use of two transitions that express the same idea. For instance, however, nevertheless, these two mean the same thing. So you should just pick one of. Then overuse or underuse. This goes beyond SAT. Even when you're writing, you don't want to overuse transitions. It makes your writing look mechanical or choppy. You also don't want to underuse because it will make your work look disjointed. There will be no cohesion. There will be no connectedness. So you just want to use the right amount of transition words. Also, transition words can affect the tone. If you use the wrong transition word, it may affect the tone. If it's supposed to be formal and you use the word like anyway, this is not formal. So yes, it's a transition word, but it doesn't fit into a formal context. Alright? Let's look at these examples. Renewable energy projects are expanding rapidly. Nevertheless, more nations are investing in solar technology. This cannot be correct because nevertheless is used to indicate contrast. And this first idea or first sentence does not contradict the next one. It says energy projects are expanding, renewable energy projects. Which means the next sentence that talks about solar technology supports it because solar technology is an example of renewable energy projects. So contrast cannot be the case. It should be something that shows cause and effect. And that's why we replace nevertheless with therefore here. Therefore. So it will read renewable energy projects are expanding rapidly. Therefore, more nations are investing in solar technology. Or as a result. Example 2. The new transportation system reduces carbon emissions. The new transportation system reduces carbon emissions. In contrast, it improves urban mobility. This is strange. This is an advantage. This first sentence is an advantage that the new transportation system is reducing carbon emissions. The next sentence says it also improves urban mobility. That's another advantage. So how can it be in contrast? It should be something that, because this one continues or adds to the previous one, it should be something that shows addition. And that's why we are replacing in contrast with additionally. So it will be the new transportation system reduces carbon emissions. Additionally, it improves urban mobility. Look at the next one. Many artists draw inspiration from nature. However, others find it in urban environments. So here it is correct because the first one mentions how some artists draw inspiration, and then the next sentence talks about how some others draw theirs in a different way. So the fact that these two oppose or contrast means however is fine. So yeah, that's it. You can go through this on your own to see um, similar question types. You can always pause and read. So step-by-step approach for transition questions. When you see a transition question, look at the sentence and identify the relationship. That's the first step. Identify the relationship between the two sentences in which the transition occur in the middle. Ask yourself, are they continuing? Are they contrasting? Or is there a case of cause and effect? That will tell you which transition word to use. Then eliminate illogical options. If a transition implies contrast but the ideas match, discard it. At least the transition is wrong. How can it imply contrast when the ideas match? So you have to remove the transition. Then test by omission. Temporarily remove the transition. The natural logic between the sentences often reveals the intended connection. When you read the two sentences, the two ideas that are connected without the transition in the middle, you'll be able to tell what the relationship is and what transition should fit in there. Of course, you check the tone and context, and then you choose transitions that fit the passage's level of formality and tone. Is it formal? Is it informal? Choose a transition that fits that context. So that's it. On that note, we've come to the end of conclusion and transition. Remember to apply this knowledge to questions that deal with conclusion and questions that deal with transition. See you in the next class.